New at noon, freeway shootings and illegal guns. Michigan State Police just talked about two battles that they are facing in Metro Detroit. And you may have heard Detroit's casinos are reopening next week, but have you heard about all of the new rules? What you need to know before you plan to go. Also, President Trump's newest tweet about November's election has a lot of people talking. But Michigan's Secretary of State has already launched her defense. Local 4 News at noon starts now. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us here on ClickOnDetroit.com. I'm Rhonda Walker. We start with that new information about freeway shootings and illegal guns on the streets of Metro Detroit. Michigan State Police spoke with Local 4's Victor Williams. He tells us about their concerns and where these investigations are headed.
Yeah, well, state police have been investigating these freeway shootings nonstop, and so far they've at least made gains on 10 of the 15 shootings that have happened since June the 15th. But what they're mainly concerned about now is the amount of guns that they're finding in the cars on the freeway. 103 illegal guns sit on the table at a press conference carried out by higher-ups with Michigan State Police, all of them taken off the streets between April 30th and July 30th of this year. A staggering number considering the fact that around the same time last year, only a grand total of 28 were seized. Lieutenant Mike Shaw calls it a sign of the times because the people they're finding these weapons on will surprise you.
We're not, getting these off like gun sales or anything like that. These are speeding stops. These are stops where somebody was swerving in their lane and maybe had open intox in their vehicle. Maybe somebody didn't have a driver's license or insurance. That's where we're actually getting these guns from, is not like where you would think the traditional, somebody opens up a trunk and you see all these long guns in there. These are everyday folks that are driving around with illegal guns. From
here, these guns will be taken to the lab to see if they can be tied to any other crimes, and after that, they'll be destroyed. Victor Williams, Local 4.
All right, Victor, thank you. 4 people are in the hospital after a shooting on Detroit's east side. It happened in the area of Canton and Farnsworth near East Grand Boulevard and East Warren Avenue. Police are telling us that the group was outside of a home when a car drove by and someone inside started firing shots. 3 men and a woman were hit. 2 of the victims are in critical condition and the other 2 are unstable. A possible motive or suspect description has not been released, but we will keep you updated when we learn more. Detroit police are investigating a deadly shooting on the city's west side. This happened overnight at the Citgo gas station on West McNichols. Investigators say that a 46-year-old man was found dead inside of his car. No word on what led up to the shooting, but anyone with information is asked to give Detroit police a call. And thick smoke pours out of an East Point home this morning. It happened in the area of Gratiot and 9 Mile. Sky 4 shows you the scene from above. East Point Fire is telling us that one person who lives at the home was taken to the hospital with just minor injuries. The fire department is investigating the cause of the fire, but East Point says that the fire is a reminder to change the batteries in your smoke detectors. And breaking news here this noon, former presidential candidate and businessman Herman Cain has died from the coronavirus. This is according to a statement on his website. Cain tested positive for the virus a week after attending President Trump's rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma back in June. However, it's unknown where Cain contracted the virus. Cain was a 2012 Republican presidential candidate and former CEO of Godfather's Pizza. He was 74 years old. And we are tracking new information on the coronavirus, including another positive test connected to a summer school program. Today, Warren Consolidated Schools confirms one staff member tested positive. We don't have information on the specific school, but the district says that students and staff were moved away from where that person had been working. Yesterday, the state reported 996 new cases, but 300 of those cases were from a backlog reported by a private lab. 2 additional deaths in the past day have been reported as well, as the death rate has remained largely flat. We share the new numbers every afternoon for the daily rates of COVID infections and also deaths on ClickOnDetroit.com. You can get alerts right on your phone with the Click On app as well. Meanwhile, Governor Whitmer has both tightened the reins and loosened some gatherings in Michigan while also allowing Detroit's casinos to finally reopen. The casinos are vital to Detroit's economy and the city's budget. So the change has been long awaited. But as Local 4's Nick Monticelli shows us, it won't be anything like business as usual.
Well, here's a safe bet. It's going to be a whole lot different inside of Detroit casinos from now on. 15% capacity inside. Slot machines are shut down. Tables are closed. But the upside is that there's revenue, albeit a small amount, for the city of Detroit again. It has been months since Detroit casinos have seen any gaming, and next week that will change. On August 15th, casinos here will be allowed to open again, but only at 15% of their capacity. Inside MGM Casino, thousands of chairs have been removed, making room for social distancing. Plexiglass and hand washing stations are up, and dice and chips will be routinely sanitized.
We're making sure that health and safety are placed as a priority above even potential revenue generation.
On the floor of the MGM's roughly 3,200 slot machines will be down to about 1,200. It'll be the same at Motor City and Greektown casinos as well, again making room for social distancing. Motor City says they will not have seating for table games, and smoking will likely be prohibited in all three casinos. The revenue generated by Detroit's casinos is critical. There is an estimated $100 million hole in Detroit's budget now, which is why many are eager for them to reopen.
We have Detroit residents currently visiting either Michigan tribal casinos or casinos in Ohio and Indiana that don't have the level requirements that we have.
Now, there will be temperature screenings and health screenings mandatory for all employees and all visitors, and masks must be worn inside. I'm Nick Monticelli, Local 4.
Nick, thank you. And while reopening the casinos, Governor Whitmer tightened restrictions in northern lower Michigan to slow the spread of COVID-19 and in the UP. So starting tomorrow, indoor gatherings for the Traverse City region and the Upper Peninsula will be limited to 10 people. That's for indoor gatherings. Also, bars must close for indoor service if more than 70% of the gross sales are from alcohol. The new restrictions cover 32 northern counties in Phase 5 of the governor's reopening plan. And the limits are similar to ones already in place in the rest of the state, including Metro Detroit, which is in Phase 4. Flint residents have won a key battle before the state's highest court. Their lawsuit targeting public officials connected to the city's contaminated water can move forward. The plaintiffs named former Governor Snyder and other officials in the suit for their decisions to change the city's water source. This is a procedural victory in the case, which now goes back to the Court of Claims. The court says that Flint residents can pursue a claim of diminished property values and a violation of bodily integrity. Justice Richards Bernstein says that the plaintiffs raise some of the most disturbing allegations against government officials in Michigan's history. President Trump is launching new controversy with a tweet about the upcoming elections. The remark seems more casual than an actual proposal, but he tweeted the following this morning, quote, "Delay the election until people can properly, securely, and safely vote," with a series of question marks. The president has been raising questions about mail-in voting with no proof of widespread problems. Michigan's Secretary of State just addressed this issue yesterday.
Various actors will try to attempt to spread false information about the integrity and security of our systems that are intended to mislead voters about their rights and sow seeds of doubt among the electorate about the accuracy of the results of our elections. That whether they vote in person or through the mail, our elections are secure, their vote will be safe, and their ballot will be counted.
And to make sure your ballot is counted, you must vote. Michigan's primary election is set for next Tuesday, August 4th. And we are online today as well as Local 4 covers the funeral of Congressman John Lewis. Here are some of the arrivals from earlier this morning. The civil rights icon is being remembered in Atlanta, Georgia, with many Washington heavyweights in attendance, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who is on the podium right now. Also speaking earlier, former President Bill Clinton and former President George W. Bush. This is a live look at the service, as I mentioned. mentioned, Nancy Pelosi is speaking about her friend and colleague, Georgia Congressman John Lewis. This is being held at the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. served as pastor. President Barack Obama is expected to speak, delivering the eulogy that you can watch right on clickondetroit.com and also here on Local 4. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg is in a New York hospital and recovering from a non-surgical medical procedure. A statement from the court says that doctors replaced a bile duct stent to reduce the risk of infection. Justice Ginsburg is expected to be released by the weekend. Earlier this month, Justice Ginsburg revealed that she is again being treated for liver cancer, and her chemotherapy treatment is showing positive results. Meanwhile, she's working all the way through it. The United States has launched its latest and ambitious mission to Mars. This morning's launch of the Perseverance rover was perfect.
Release.
Sitting atop the rocket was a rover the size of a car. About an hour after launch, Perseverance broke free of Earth's orbit and headed off to Mars. When it arrives, Perseverance will drive below the surface to look for signs of life, and with plans to have those samples after drilling into the Mars taken by astronauts in the next decade back here on Earth to evaluate. The rover will also launch a small helicopter to fly over the Martian surface. Arrival time at Mars, it takes a while to get up there, not until next February. It's like a 7-month trip.
We have time, though. I think we can wait.
Yeah, actually. I mean, what else do we have to do these days?
I think
pretty
we have
exciting.
other good news to talk about, too.
Yes. Well, let's talk about the weather. That's some good news.
Exactly right, Rhonda. We've got the beautiful sunshine out there. It is warm. It is comfortable. We have temperatures close to 80 degrees, just as we talked about earlier this morning when you joined us on Local 4 News today, starting at 4:30 a.m. It's 79 right now. Only feels 1 degree higher, but 80 is what it feels like. That's still comfortable for this time of year. Calm wind out there, and dew points mostly around 60 degrees or just a bit more. We've got baseball here in downtown Detroit. No rain is going to spoil this game for today. We're looking at 84 degrees by 4 p.m. for anyone who happens to be downtown, whether you live here or if you're visiting. We're looking at 80 degrees by game start, and no rain to spoil the first pitch at all. Expect an on-time start and fair conditions weather-wise during the game. Mild conditions instead of warm ones after the sun goes down with temperatures in the 70s. Isaias, that is the newest tropical storm. Tropical storm Isaias is just now leaving Puerto Rico after some high wind and heavy rain. Its winds have been around 50 to 60 miles per hour all morning long, and they're still at around 60 miles per hour right now. By this evening, it'll be moving over the Dominican Republic, also the country of Haiti, on the shared island of Hispaniola, then moving through the Bahamas just north of Cuba, and by Friday and into Saturday, still on track to affect southern Florida, including Miami, and basically hugging the coastline from Florida through southeast Georgia and the Carolinas, all the way until early next week. That's how it looks right now. Doesn't look to intensify too much. That being said, it will still bring a lot of rain and some significant winds, being a moderate to strong tropical storm. And that track could change, so keep it tuned right here to Local 4, and you can track it on the Local Forecasters app, which is free. Search WDIV in your app store. We've got 75 warm degrees for our friends in Port Huron, 77 in Pontiac, and already up to 80 degrees in Adrian. All these temperatures slightly lower than yesterday at this time by maybe 1 to 4 degrees. But it will still be a warm and lovely day. A wind out of the north or northeast, depending on where you are. It's bringing in some of that drier, more comfortable air, where dew points, instead of being in the upper 60s or low 70s, you're talking about upper 50s and low 60s for the most part. Between 60 and 65 degrees, so not as much moisture or humidity in the air, so it feels more tolerable out there and feels more comfortable. And any sort of rainfall, significant rainfall, is staying to our south. For our friends over in the Ohio Valley and parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, not only right now, but also through the rest of the afternoon. High pressure remains over us, blocking a lot of that moisture and pushing it farther south later tonight, inviting a fair amount of sunshine as we go into at least the first half of the weekend. But a cold front brings some rain showers by Saturday night and the second half of the weekend. But again, not for today. Highs around 83 to 84 for today. Friday looking spectacular with 82 degrees, 84 once again on Saturday. Then get ready for some rain by Sunday, but then it's out of here by primary day Tuesday. Back to you.
All right, Andrew, thank you. And thank all of you for joining us right here on clickondetroit.com for our special edition of Local 4 News at noon. Remember that we have live coverage of Congressman John Lewis's funeral right now here at clickondetroit.com as well. We'll see you back here for Local 4 News first at 4. Enjoy the rest of your day.